There are things that man can do. He can sail through the air in his plane. But no man can do a lot of things. Man, he's limited. Can you catch the wind? Can you make the world spin?
What is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, then we no longer recognize the truth at all. What can we do then? What else is left but to abandon even the hope of truth and content ourselves instead with stories? In these stories, it doesn't matter who the heroes are. All we want to know is who is to blame.
Our goal is the happiness of all mankind.
What have they done?
Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid. Lies.
So it is their fault.
Yes.
I thought I knew what I was going to talk about tonight. But the more and more I researched, I realized the bigger story isn't whether or not we should have trusted ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. It's how do we even know who we should trust? If you've ever heard me talk about human behavior, I like to say our thoughts control what we do. But what happens when you don't believe what you're told, especially when it comes to our health? During COVID, we were told constantly what to do. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, stay home, take the vaccine, don't take this medicine, take that medicine. But none of those instructions existed in a vacuum. Before they could affect our behavior, there was another question. Do we believe the people telling us? The bigger issue isn't who was right, because that depends on who you trust. If one side believes their leader really is a king or a dictator, then of course they're going to distrust him, even if what he says is recommended by a trained physician. On the other hand, if the other side feels they're being canceled or silenced, then of course they're going to ask, why? What are you hiding? What are your motives? So, if I'm honest, I had this whole show planned around what medicines we should have used and why we didn't. But the more I researched, I realized we actually have a much bigger problem. And it all starts with the 2 videos you're about to see right now.
And 60 years after President John F. Kennedy's assassination, more than 63,000 pages of unredacted files, long held secret, are now public. The highly anticipated document drop did not reveal...
What is the cost of lies? It's not that we'll mistake them for the truth. The real danger is that if we hear enough lies, then we no longer recognize the truth at all. What can we do then? What else is left but to abandon even the hope of truth and content ourselves instead with stories? In these stories, it doesn't matter who the heroes are. All we want to know is who is to blame.
Our goal is the happiness of all mankind.
What have they done? Every lie we tell incurs a debt to the truth. Sooner or later, that debt is paid. Lies.
So it is their fault.
Yes.
I thought I knew what I was going to talk about tonight. But the more and more I researched, I realized the bigger story isn't whether or not we should have trusted ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine. It's how do we even know who we should trust? If you've ever heard me talk about human behavior, I like to say our thoughts control what we do. But what happens when you don't believe what you're told, especially when it comes to our health? During COVID, we were told constantly what to do. Wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, stay home, take the vaccine. Don't take this medicine, take that medicine. But none of those instructions existed in a vacuum. Before they could affect our behavior, there was another question. Do we believe the people telling us? The bigger issue isn't who was right, because that depends on who you trust. If one side believes their leader really is a king or a dictator, then of course they're going to distrust him, even if what he says is recommended by a trained physician. On the other hand, if the other side feels they're being canceled or silenced, then of course they're going to ask, why? What are you hiding? What are your motives? So, if I'm honest, I had this whole show planned around what medicines we should have used and why we didn't. But the more I researched, I realized we actually have a much bigger problem. And it all starts with the two videos you're about to see right now.
60 years after President John F. Kennedy's assassination, more than 63,000 pages of unredacted files long held secret are now public. The highly anticipated document drop did not reveal...
So of course that was 9/11, and also hold on, I'm having technical problems right here. Wait a minute. All right, so that was 9/11 and the Kennedy assassination. And what does that tell us? That a lot of people, well, there's a poll that says 65% of Americans believe somebody other than Oswald was involved in the Kennedy assassination. So don't believe the government on that one. Now, what about 9/11? A lot of people are starting to believe that we weren't told the truth about what happened that day. We saw the buildings fall, but did you know there was a third building that fell that was not hit by a plane? I didn't find that out till probably sometime last year. And it's made me think. I've done a lot of research on what's going on, and I too don't believe we've been told the truth from our government on what happened on 9/11. And honestly, I don't think we're ever going to get the truth. So, who do you believe? Who do you believe? I remember Dr. Anthony Fauci going on 60 Minutes, and this pretty much set the tone for me on what I was going to believe and whether I thought I was hearing the truth. Let's hear Dr. Anthony Fauci in early of March, before Trump gave his hydroxychloroquine press conference and all that. This is Fauci talking about masks. You probably saw that on 60 Minutes. Check it out.
There's a lot of confusion among people and misinformation surrounding face masks. Can you discuss that?
The masks are important for someone who's infected to prevent them from infecting someone else. Now, when you see people and look at the films in China and South Korea, whatever, everybody's wearing a mask. Right now in the United States, people should not be walking around with masks.
You're sure of it? Because people are listening really closely to this.
Right now, people should not be walking. There's no reason to be walking around with a mask. When you're in the middle of an outbreak, wearing a mask might make people feel a little bit better, and it might even block a droplet, but it's not providing the perfect protection that people think that it is. And often, there are unintended consequences. People keep fiddling with the mask and they keep touching their face.
And can you get some schmutz sort of staying inside there?
Of course. But when you think masks, you should think of healthcare providers needing them and people who are ill. The people who, when you look at the films of foreign countries and you see 85% of the people wearing masks, that's fine. That's fine. I'm not against it. If you want to do it, that's fine.
But it can lead to a shortage of masks.
Exactly. That's the point. It could lead to a shortage of masks for the people who really need it.
So how did we go from that to one day he's wearing 3 masks? So if you want to call in, if you want to get in on this, let me know. Let's see, do we have somebody back here? Wait a minute, I thought we did. Maybe we don't. Let's listen to, if I can find Senator Josh Hawley just grilling Fauci during the hearing just a week ago. Where is that? And there we go.
Well, nothing says honesty like taking the fifth, huh, Doc? Let's try something. What day of the week is it today?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color tie are you wearing?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
What color's the carpet in front of you?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Let's just get one thing straight. You don't have any rights under the Fifth Amendment because you've been pardoned, as you very well know. As the Supreme Court has been clear for a century and more, Brown versus Walker, 1896, when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. You know that. Your lawyers sitting behind you now shifting nervously in their chairs. They know it. This isn't about the Constitution. This isn't about the law. This is about contempt. Contempt for this body and contempt for the American people. But I think I know why you're doing it. It's because you don't want to answer questions. It's because you did all kinds of terrible things. It's because during the pandemic you got rich, didn't you? You got rich while people were dying, hundreds of thousands of Americans, over 1 million in the end, and you were getting rich. And not only were you doing that, you were using federal employees with taxpayer money to apply for and solicit cash prizes for you personally, cash prizes totaling over $1 million. You did all of that during the pandemic, didn't you? That's a question.
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
You remember Greg Folkers? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Your chief of staff is the answer. Do you remember Patricia Conrad? Who was that?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
She was your personal assistant. And what were these individuals doing in the depth of the pandemic in November of 2020 when millions of Americans were suffering from COVID, what were they doing? I tell you what they're doing. Folkers was on your behalf soliciting and gathering information for a cash award. Let's look at it. We've got his email right here, right over my shoulder. Volker says, I'm working on this nomination for the Dan David Award for Fauci. We need to beef up the COVID part. Do you have language in the can that you could share that delineates how we responded in new ways to COVID? He sends this to multiple federal employees. What was the Dan David Award? Do you remember, Doc?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
It was a $900,000 cash award. $900,000 cash award. And he got it because he used federal employees to get it. And this wasn't the only award, was it, Dr. Fauci? In fact, you applied for and received at least 8 other federal cash prizes on federal time using federal employees and federal resources. Here they are over my shoulder. Besides the Dan David Award, you've got the Partnership for Public Service, you've got the Adelson Prize, you've got the Smithsonian Award, you've got the National Academy of Medicine's Award, you've got the CDC Foundation. In fact, you turned your staff into a full-time application machine. You actually wrote to people and said, do you think maybe I'd qualify? And you got cash for all of this. And it wasn't just 1 or 2 employees, was it? In fact, you used 8 separate federal employees on federal time using federal resources to solicit cash awards. Isn't that true?
On the advice of counsel, I respectfully decline to answer based upon my rights under the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution.
Here they are right over my shoulder. Here's all of them.
Okay, so Fauci wouldn't talk, wouldn't say a word. Didn't really see that coming. I actually wanted to hear what he was going to say. Let's hear from Dr. Stella Emanuel, who says she never lost a patient. She put him on hydroxychloroquine and I believe it's zinc. But because of the hatred for President Trump and who knows what else, they tried to silence her. But she says she wasn't going to be silenced. Let's hear from her back in 2020.
I'm here because I have personally treated over 350 patients with COVID. Patients that have diabetes, patients that have high blood pressure, patients that have asthma, old people. I think my oldest patient is 92, 87-year-olds. And the result has been the same. I put them on hydroxychloroquine, I put them on zinc, I put them on Zithromax, and they are all well. For the past few months, I've taken care of over 350 patients. We've not lost one. Not a diabetic, not somebody with high blood pressure, not somebody with asthma, not an old person. We've not lost one patient. And on top of that, I've put myself, my staff, and many doctors that I know on hydroxychloroquine for prevention, because by the very mechanism of action, it works early and as a prophylaxis. We see patients, 10 to 15 COVID patients every day.
So she actually lives right here in Houston. I'm trying to get an interview with her, and hopefully I'll get that pretty soon. Dr. Stella Emanuel, just one of many doctors who said they used hydroxychloroquine and were successful. Now, there's been studies that show that it really isn't any better than anything else. But who do you believe? That's hard to say. Here's another doctor who he just goes off on Dr. Stella. Let's listen to him.
First, for those who don't know who I am Dr. Coupe, and I am a frontline physician and have been caring for many COVID-19 infected patients in my community. I have seen and treated different people that presented in all different spectrum of this disease. People who are asymptomatic, people with mild to moderate diseases, people with severe illness that need oxygenation in the hospitals, as well as those that are in critical condition fighting for their lives. In other words, I have experienced the entire story, the entire spectrum of this disease. And I will tell you, I do not stand with those doctors in DC claiming to be America's frontline doctors. And for the record, I do not endorse the use of hydroxychloroquine. I will not be able to address all of those things that were said in that video, but whatever questions that you may have, just leave me a comment at the end of this post or send me a message and I'll try my best to answer it later. Now, Dr. Stella Emanuel. Wow. I mean, your passion is definitely real. You know, and just because you say something passionately does not mean that you are telling the truth. It only tells me that you are ignorant to it. And me and my community, we see right through that. And just because you claim you are an expert does not mean that you are not wrong. In fact, you have what I like to call the expert fallacy. And me and my people, we don't believe you. Now, a couple of important points, okay? So, you are quoting observational studies, and worse, your own observational study, and ignoring the randomized, double-blinded control studies, which doesn't make much sense to me. By the way, hydroxychloroquine was found to have no benefit after using the highest form of research that we have. So your merely 300, 350 patients that you saw is not enough for me or my people to believe a word you're saying. Now, WHO is made up of doctors and other healthcare professionals from around the world that are in the front lines practicing every day and facing many infectious diseases, including COVID-19. And they've been doing this for decades. And in my opinion, they're more likely to be in touch with what's happening in the front lines than any other organization or person. You are one frontline doctor with merely 300 patients under your belt, and I need to listen to you? Why should I do that? These double-blinded studies are not perfect, but it is the closest thing we have to the truth. I am sorry, but we don't believe you. You are passionate, so I think it might be a blind spot of yours. So please allow us to point it out for you, okay? So let us tackle some of your technical points that you based off of your false claims. So you say you treated 350 people, which by the way, is a very round number. So I would consider recounting how many patients you really treated. But you said all of them got better on hydroxychloroquine. Okay, I see. Are you sure that it was not a coincidence? Maybe those patients were going to get better anyway. Or those patients you treated only experienced mild to moderate symptoms, and so they're going to improve. Maybe they are all the healthy ones. I don't know. Maybe the really sick ones go to the hospital and you did not get a chance to see them. Maybe there are other variables in play that made them get better. But then again, I forgot. You don't do double-blinded randomized control studies, so you would never know the answer to those questions. I am not going to address the point you made about hiccups, okay? I mean, it's like, wow. I am not even going to address that. Your observational studies you are quoting have...
There, I mean, he had some legitimate points. You know, maybe some of those people were going to get better anyway. You know, not everybody died. The majority of people didn't die. A small percentage of people died. In fact, that's why I've been saying we didn't need to do everything that we did. It was a small percentage of people who were dying. Most of them had comorbidities, and a large percentage of them were the elderly. So he's got a point. Just because you had 300 patients and none of them died doesn't necessarily mean it's because of the hydroxychloroquine. But it doesn't mean it wasn't either. So we don't know. But obviously, he didn't like what she was doing at all. But then it brings up the same question, who do you trust? Who do you trust? I don't know anymore. And now we're hearing it was to the point that many athletes who wanted to play were faking it. You heard the news about Cam Newton yesterday saying that Aaron Rodgers, what he said was true, and that athletes were buying vaccination cards. Yeah, let's listen to Cam Newton on his podcast.
How do we not know that that was propaganda for the pharmaceutical companies to penetrate and say, hey, if we could control the NFL, then everybody else will follow. So we don't know.
He's right. We don't know. We don't know. And who knows? Maybe we never will. Maybe we never know. We will. So let's hear from one more person. Actually, no. Nobody called in, no guests. So we're going to end it right there. Next week, be sure to watch. I'm going to be talking about psychology and specifically men playing in women's sports. What does that do to your psyche? What are you thinking when you know right away you have no chance? Not only is this person superior, I mean, that happens all the time in sports, but they are actually a different sex. What does that do? How do you concentrate? How do you do your routine when you're thinking you have no chance? How do you concentrate on your routine when you might be thinking about getting hurt? Remember the volleyball player in high school, and there was a trans playing, and he spiked the ball so hard it hit her in the head, and she got a concussion? So we'll be talking about that next week. Be sure to check that out. Be sure to hit the like button and follow if you like what you're hearing. I'll be doing a talk every Wednesday of the month. And thank you for watching. Again, don't forget to hit the like button. And we'll see you again next time.
God can. Yes, He can. God can. I know He can. God can. The man is able. God can. There was a man that came down about 2,000